When I left, these straight neck summer squash were not big enough to harvest, and I knew that they were going to really expand in size while I was gone. Guten gardening, everybody. Well, I just got back from over 4,000 miles of driving from here down into Maryland, then up through New York into Canada, and the whole way back around through New England. A really long trip, a lot of driving, a lot of miles, a lot of amazing gardens. But for the past 2+ weeks, that means that the garden here at Guten Gardening has been left to Mother Nature. It's been at the mercy of whatever rain was going to fall, etc., in terms of watering. And so today we're going to take a look at what's happened since I left the garden in those 2 weeks. So a nice garden tour, but I have to quickly say before I start this tour, be ready for some awesome gardens that we found along our 4,000+ mile journey. All right, let's see how our garden fared while we were gone. And I'm actually going to start this tour in a spot that I don't usually begin at, which is our main garden space behind our property, so we can see how everything is developed. This is our kale area of the garden, and when I left there was not much here. These plants were not very far along, and it's pretty amazing to me to see how 2 weeks has really changed that. We got several different varieties. You can see the dino kale or the lacinato kale and the curly leaf kale right here. Along the way, I have a few weeds in here that I'm going to have to, well, that didn't go very well, that I'm going to have to get out of here. But for the most part, I laid down some hay all along our garden before we left, and I think that made a nice difference. I'll also show you, this is our asparagus here, and you can see a couple of seeds on here. They're not red, they're still green, and actually this looks like it's died, but things have fallen over a little bit, and I think that's a result of some of the really torrential downpours, some massive storms that happened while I was gone. Here is our celery. This was maybe 2 or 3 pieces, it seemed like, whenever I left, but now it's coming along nicely. And I only kept 3 volunteer tomatoes this season. Last year they were just so overwhelming. So they're volunteers. I don't know exactly what they are, but this is going to be some kind of cherry tomato. It looks like, I can't quite tell yet with the other ones because I don't see any growth of flowers or anything yet. And then I've got some summer squash growing in between each of our trellises here. And I did that this year with the summer squash in between the trellises because I still want to have easy access, even though it looks like there's some empty space here. I want to have easy access to things like our pole beans here, which are just now getting to a point where it looks like we're going to start seeing some flowers. Don't see any yet, but we'll be getting beans in the next couple of weeks, I would guess. And I did several different trellises of those beans to try to get a little bit more in terms of production. I will say that it looks like a good number were eaten up by whatever critters got in here. But that being said, I think we'll get enough bean production out of here to do well. Now here's an area that I'm really excited about. I love cabbage a lot, and I think these cabbages obviously just now starting to come together here in the center. Take a look at this one. You can see it's just now starting to come together, but I think we're going to see some really nice production this year, and I'm hopeful that we do better with our purple cabbage than we have in the past. For whatever reason, we've struggled with the purple cabbage. It hasn't really produced the size that we would like in the past. But you can see I've got about a dozen cabbage plants in here. It's one of those that lasts for a good while in the fridge once you've picked it. And it's also something that tastes really good in a number of different preparations. And one of our favorites these days is our stir fry. Some plants that didn't fare so well while we were gone. These are our cucumbers, and actually some of these look pretty good. So like this I can harvest. This cucumber I'll harvest off of here, and this cucumber is meant to look like this particular variety. Some of those cucumbers are pretty cool looking, but the plants themselves are dying back. So the cucumbers this year not looking so great. I mean, we can definitely save some of the seeds from these, but I'm not sure that it'll be worth it given the fact that the plants themselves look like they did not fare so well. So I'm not gonna waste too much time on the cucumbers. Now, when I left, these straight neck summer squash were not big enough to harvest, and I knew that they were going to really expand in size while I was gone. And the thing is, when they get on here and they're on here for too long, they become really tough on the outside. Something that you might need to zoodle or, you know, at least trim the exterior off. But there's a ton of summer squash on here, and this is something I'm really happy about. Summer squash has given us trouble in the past with powdery mildew, and it looks like all of these summer squash plants are really nice and healthy, and again, going to be pretty good producers for us. And actually, we planted several varieties of patty pan squash as well. And I put several of those behind our house, right beside some of our raspberries here. And I see the flowers on here. I don't see any female flowers yet, but it'll be interesting. Once they come in, you're gonna like the look of these. I won't say too much else about them right now. But directly on the other side, and this is more of a shaded area because the house is here to block some of that sunlight, we have some of our cauliflower in here as well. You can tell these beautiful brassica leaves. I would imagine within the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see the foundation or the formation of some heads on here. But we'll see, we'll keep a close eye on these. Take a look at the flowers on these leeks, these overwintered leeks. They're so big in comparison. They're falling over. They're so big. I'm gonna have to put some covering on here so we can capture these seeds. Unbelievable. Oh, this one is even bigger. I think this is the biggest one out here. It's like a globe, a leek flower globe. So nice. One thing that's really exciting to see is the sweet potatoes themselves in our containers here are taking off. You know, I took all of these directly off of the sweet potato. I didn't give it time to root or anything like that. I just peeled each sweet potato slip off, and they want to live so much that even when it looks like they're not going to do anything, that the heat of the day is going to come along and really cause them problems, they still have the capacity to take off. And that's also the case in our GreenStalk here, where once again we're growing sweet potatoes. I'm only growing them in the top tiers. The 5th tier here at the bottom I have peppers, but the top 4 tiers in here I got sweet potatoes, and these are looking really nice. And the same can be said for our DIY vertical gardens, where we have sweet potatoes, a couple of different varieties and a couple of different tiers. It looks like while I was gone, one of the slips didn't make it, but the other ones are looking nice. And on top we have some potatoes, but this is the same format we've used in the past. Potatoes on top, sweet potatoes on the bottom. This is one of the harder harvests for us to complete because of how I have to disassemble and then reassemble the setup, but I'm really excited to see how well this performs this season. And over here we see our garlic, which is looking nice. It looks like it's been blown over a little bit. Again, we've had some pretty massive storms out here, but this is ready to harvest. It probably could have been harvested a week ago, and maybe that'll be one of our next videos showing you the garlic that we're harvesting out of here. Well, you can see the weeds in this raised bed. Whatever blew into here in terms of seed, that is definitely happening right alongside of our beets. So we have beets that came up, and then we have a ton of weeds that I have to get out of here. I actually came out earlier and did a little bit of weeding from some of our multi-sown beets. This bed looks a little bit better, although I'll say again, not being out here to consistently water, I'd say the plants are probably a little bit stressed. But that being said, I think we'll still get some good growth. There's some more of our sweet potatoes in containers. One of the things I wanted to try this season was a GreenStalk filled with pepper plants to see what we could do. And this is a leaf system GreenStalk. So you have 42 different pockets. And I know the pepper plants don't love wet feet, so I figured they wouldn't have a problem if I couldn't water, etc. while I was gone. Now, these are a late start to them. I'll have to tell you that right now. So that's why they're not any bigger than they are, but they're looking pretty nice considering the fact that I started with about 2-inch seedlings only a couple of weeks ago. I think these are looking really good. And this forest of potatoes that you see in front of you, all these different potato plants, we've got 6 different varieties of potatoes growing in this forest. I think the Sharp O'Mearas are going to live the longest out of all of these that we have in here. But up front here, we have a really nice, exciting experiment with 3 different varieties of fingerling potatoes. One thing I'm noticing is this particular plant right here, which is coming from inside the bed. This might have been one of our volunteers, but it looks like something got to it. You see it's curling up, whereas everything else is not at this point. So we'll see what that means. But this, another month or so before we harvest. So I'm working my way around the house. We're on the eastern side of the house now, and behind me is our compost bin garden. Now this year we've added a lot of quail waste in here along with grass clippings, etc. And I just planted some of the plants that I had that were extra in here. So we'll have some melons in here. We have some beautiful zucchini coming in, a couple of those. These were tiny when I left. It's really amazing to me how quickly these plants will develop. And here, you see that kohlrabi? What do we got here? Probably 2 inches in diameter on that kohlrabi. I love our kohlrabi. So I'm so happy to see some really nice development in this kohlrabi. And right beside that, we have some more of our garlic. Here on the right is our spring garlic that I'm letting to go. Well, you can see it here in our long raised bed, but I'm letting that spring garlic go the whole way until now. You can see that they have smaller scapes. It's a smaller garlic. This one's standing straight up. So I'm actually going to be harvesting this today, along with, this is not a spring garlic, but this is going to be a different video from our main garlic harvest. So this is going to come out today. It's probably about a week overdue. But we're going to go ahead and take care of that because we don't want the cloves to all separate. All along here is our container garden, our patio container garden. And one of the questions we've asked ourselves, or tried to ask ourselves, is what all can we grow in these smaller containers? Because of course, one of our focuses has been on small space gardening and seeing what exactly, what are the limits of small space gardening. So you're going to see a bunch of different varieties of plants growing in here, from garlic to onions. Now these onions, looks like there's some purslane, delicious purslane that's self-seeded into here. And then we have some cauliflower, some sweet potatoes growing in a pot. And this is actually the first time I've grown sweet potatoes in this small of a container. And right beside that, some really nice and healthy peppers. And you can actually see the peppers are starting to form one here. So these pepper plants in our containers are actually the farthest along of any of our peppers. Again, for our peppers in general, everything seems to be a little bit behind in terms of when we got everything planted. There's our mint in containers. I actually took this mint up from our sidewalk here where it had somehow spread and was growing. It's starting to die back now, but I'm not worried about that one bit. Now, again, potatoes here, potatoes there. There's lots of potatoes everywhere, really. Some summer squash in here. This is a patty pan summer squash. Our Egyptian walking onions, which are so ready to spread. Look at this. Look at how they, you know what? I really need to do a full video just on these Egyptian onions. It's absolutely fascinating. A fascinating plant. Some more of our peppers, some more summer squash. I'm really excited to see how these summer squash, these patty pan squash turn out. This is our first year growing these particular varieties. Again, I'm hedging a little bit on telling you more because I want you to see this exciting new variety when you can actually see the plants themselves. And here are a couple of our kohlrabi grown in containers. You can see I've put down some hay as well to try to keep some of that moisture in. This is our purslane, our intentional purslane plant, meaning that this is the one we wanted. This is the container we're keeping the purslane in. And some dill that has 100% gone to seed. And this stuff will spread and spread and spread. Summer squash, potatoes, sweet potatoes, dill. Now this is exciting to me. Let's pull out this weed here. This is the potato experiment where I just removed the sprouts from a potato. So there's no seed potato here. It's just the sprouts. And it looks like everything, I'm going to pull all these weeds out here, but it looks like everything's starting to die back really nicely. So in the next couple of days, I'm going to get in here and harvest and see what the results of that experiment are. That is very exciting. Now, one of the changes we made this year to our garden is we didn't plant very many tomatoes because we still have a lot of tomatoes preserved, especially frozen. And so we decided to only grow a few plants for some fresh tomatoes. And over here in our long raised bed, you can see these are giant red heirloom tomatoes. I'm not actually sure the variety. That's how we saved them. We preserved them in previous years. You see all these dead leaves toward the bottom that I need to get off of here. But the plants themselves are looking pretty good besides those bottom parts. That being said, the tomatoes, one of the things we struggled with last year because we didn't water as consistently, we had blossom end rot, and that is not the case at all with these. These are looking really nice. Again, I'm going to come in and I'm going to thin this out a little bit, get rid of some of those lower leaves. Here's a piece that I knew was going to happen. And I mean, I can't say it's frustrating because I knew it was going to happen. Our beans, specifically the bush beans in our GreenStalk, have been on here too long. And so you see they're starting to change color. These are early contender green beans. I was able to harvest as many as I could before I left on the trip, but these are changing color. These are now going to just be used for collecting seeds. So I'm going to be collecting the bean seeds. I'm going to leave these on here a little bit longer. This is my younger daughter's GreenStalk. Actually, there's a couple in here that are still pretty fresh, but the plants themselves, you can see, are starting to die back. It also looks like something came along and ate a ton of the leaves off of here. So I'm not sure what that was, but the plant that is still a little bit healthy here has some green beans on here. So maybe I'll get enough from this and the other green bean GreenStalk to preserve a few more. Well, this is what remains of our red rat tail radishes. I left a couple out here to dry off so we could save some of these seeds for next season. But beyond that, down the rest of this bed, I have planted a bunch of sweet potatoes. The sweet potato slips have been in here for about 2 weeks and they're starting to take off as well. So I think these are going to do nicely. One of the things that we've noticed in the past about this bed in particular is that our production has been good. We have had to deal with voles a good bit though in the past. That being said, I really love the look of how these are doing, and you can see the different varieties in here. Look at the different shapes of the sweet potato leaves. Yeah, 3 different varieties right there. Well, here's the other green bean GreenStalk, and there's the early contenders up top that are definitely overdone, but our golden beans are looking pretty nice down here, and our purples still look pretty good. So I think I'm going to still be able to get a good bit. Yeah, this one's loaded. This plant is loaded with beans, so I'm going to be able to harvest some of those a little bit later today. Now, in our brand new front yard garden space, I have a little bit of frustration, but I kind of knew it might happen. This is not the frustration. These are some of the multi-sown beets that I planted in one of the GreenStalks right out front. This is the stone GreenStalk, the original 5-tier. But in these 2 beds, I decided to plant some sweet potatoes. And that in and of itself is not frustrating, but you can see right here, because I didn't have any protection, this was eaten up probably by rabbits. This one hasn't really done much. There are a couple of these though that look pretty good. And what I've planted out here are purple sweet potatoes. Purple sweet potatoes are one that we wanted to grow more of this season. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 slips in here. And in this bed, only 2 of them are really going along nicely so far. But again, that's part of the adjustment here. When I left, I knew that's something I didn't have time really to take care of. But we're still hopeful for some good production out of here. If I don't see a little turnaround shortly though, then I'll see what changes I need to make. Now on the other side of our front yard, we have our bed where I've put in peppers. I've got, look at the okra over here. I think I'm starting to see, well, right there, you can see where we're gonna have a flower, meaning we're gonna have some okra coming out here soon. Oh, there's a flower about to open up. All of this okra, oh, there's an okra. There we go, look at that. But it's only, these plants are only about a foot tall, which is much smaller than I would have anticipated. And I'm noticing, like, these pepper plants here look really stressed to me. And you see all the weeds that grew up in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I had weeded this before I left, but we've had so much rain. I mean, to a point where you probably can't even tell what's in this small bed. These are just some fingerling potatoes. Oh, there's one. You can see it right there. But the weeds are overtaking this spot. So I've really got to get out here and do my weeding. Otherwise, we're going to have some big problems in terms of production. Some more of our brassicas here. And in my older daughter's herb garden, you can see the dill. This dill has died back completely. But this sage is looking wonderful. The basil's looking really nice right here. There's a couple of basil plants in here. The cilantro has gone to seed. There you can see that cilantro's gone to seed, so probably didn't love the heat too much. But our parsley, it's bent over a little bit here, and there are a couple of spots where the leaves have died, but it's still looking pretty good. There's another sage plant that looks really nice. So I think given the fact that I was gone for a couple of weeks, it's not the worst thing in the world that I've seen. And then off to the side of our house where we typically start, there's our grapes right here. You can see our leaf GreenStalk with a lot of brassicas. There's a beautiful kohlrabi starting right here. This is probably planted a week before I left on this trip. We've got broccoli in here. I wanted to see how the brassicas would really do in this leaf system. The lettuce here at the top is still looking really good. We've got a couple of leaves like this. And honestly, if it hadn't rained and I had come back, this whole plant would have been just wilted and dead. But you can see based on, I'm just pulling off the dead leaves now, based on the amount of rain we got, this is still looking really nice and healthy. And all of the brassicas in here are looking good at this point. So the last thing I'm going to show you is in shadow. It's actually super comfortable underneath here, and that is with our grapes. And we have a couple of different varieties. And one thing I have to do is get out here and cover up some of these grapes. Well, hopefully you can see how well they're progressing. We've actually got some pretty good size to a large number of the grapes that are out here. And I love this one piece that has gone along our trellising on our potato bed here. And it is just, look at the size of all the grapes on here. These beautiful bunches of grapes that are not so far off from being ready. But the reason I have to cover up some of these, and I'm really gonna have to prune these back next season, but it's these grapes right here. This is my wife's favorite grape. And last season, the birds got in here and ate every single one of the grapes before she had a chance to eat any of them. And so I need to get in here with some of the netting and just climb up tall and cover this up. And then again, next season, we're gonna really cut this back to work on pruning. So I'm gonna say we were incredibly fortunate this year on vacation because it did rain plenty while we were gone. And that's the risk you take, but the trip that we took, again, so many great memories. We met Hickory Croft Farm in person. If you don't know them, you should check out their YouTube channel. We had a wonderful trip, lots of experiences that we're gonna remember for a lifetime, that our children, our gardeners in training are gonna remember for a lifetime. But it's great to be back, great to assess the situation, and I'm so happy with where things are. Well, hey, if you enjoyed today's garden tour, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.